different, you know, respect the earth. And you know, I don't want this to sound like it's all romanticizing our people, because it's for real. And our reality is that when you go to a powwow, we don't, you know, there's still debris on the land around the powwow arena. That's one of my pet peeves, is that our semblance of health is going to come when we actually do have our teachings passed on to our children, so that they won't, you know, throw garbage on the land, and that our animals are treated better than what's going on, you know, right now. And you know, we have one tribal member, Karen Good, who's really taken it upon herself to befriend the animals, so to speak, you know, and take in homeless dogs and cats and care for them. And that's a whole other story, just on an individual level, of what we still work ahead of us as a tribe, as a band of, you know, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe. And I use those words interchangeably because I know who I am. It makes no difference if non-Indians call me American Indian or Native American or Anishinaabe or Chippewa. I know I'm Anishinaabe. And so there's a lot that goes into just my own personal experience, and I only share it not to be, you know, tripping off on, you know, hey, you got to listen to my story kind of thing, but I think that what I've been through was for a purpose. You know, you coming here today and your march and your trek to do what you're doing could even be tied in, and this is my own personal opinion, when I was out, and I'm jumping ahead now. In 1969, I was fortunate enough to be out there in California when we actually stood up for our rights. And you know, the whole thing of civil rights and things like that going on in the 60s started, you know, in 64. Well, the Indians really started coming to light and asserting our rights when we, with the taking back of Alcatraz Island. And I was in that takeover and taking back. And what that, it was the first time in my life, and I was about 19 or 20 at the time, that, actually I was 19, but that I was able to realize what my mother said when we were growing up in North Minneapolis, facing the prejudice that we faced, was anytime we got into a dispute with the neighborhood kids, they'd say, go back to the reservation where you belong. You know, and this at one time was all Indian land. Who are they to say this? You know, and it's so twisted that they could use that to make the reservation seem to be something negative, like, hey, go back and do your sentence, you belong on the reservation, you know. And so, but I would go home, and then even when I went on to college, down at a Bureau of Indian Affairs picked out school for me, that I'll back up a little bit, and I know I'm jumping all over the map, but you gotta stay awake then. It's not A, B, C, D order. But anyway, after I graduated in high school, and get back to Alcatraz because it all kind of ties in. Now, when we gave up our land, I said we gave it up for certain entitlements, certain rights, right? Entitlements through treaty, through the land that we gave up, was to be health, education, and other benefits. They probably would like to call it relief, but other benefits. I choose other benefits because we should get in return some benefits for the 14.5 million acres that we gave up. And we get substandard health care. There isn't a person on the reservation that couldn't tell you a horror story at the hands of IHS. Now, hopefully that's gradually improving, but as I told the group the other day, prisoners get $3,200 per prisoner for their health care. Indians get $1,900. What is that saying? Go to prison and you need to get better care. No. And so that was one. And then education. It said we gave up the land. Are you texting? We gave up the land in return for education. It didn't say by a sliding fee scale. It didn't say, hey, someday when both your parents are both PhD people living on the reservation contributing back to their people, that their children will be ineligible. No, no, no. It didn't have a time limit, Mr. Sam. So I graduate. I'm entitled to it, right? A scholarship. I apply, Bureau of Indian Affairs, we had an agency up here at the time. And they write me back and say, well, you don't live on or near the reservation. No, Uncle Sam, you can't have it both ways. First in 1954, you're trying to lure us off. I'm off the reservation. Now you're trying to say I'm supposed to be back on. Make up your mind. You're messing with us. Live up to the treaty. Live up to the entitlement to a treaty. Education, health, and other benefits. So then I said, oh man. I said, well, I might as well go out to California. Then I got a sister out there and things going on. And I think at the time that you only had to, tuition was free once you established like residency. So then I go out there. I'm out there for about a summer. Then I hear from my, oh, by the way, when I was out there, my grandma wrote to me, my girl, that's a kind of a term of endearment that we call our kids or our grandkids, our relatives, my girl. She writes, my girl, whatever you do, don't become a houseplant. So I say my grandma was the first liberated woman that I've known. You know, she's telling me, you got to get out there, you got to work, you got to get your education. So I came home that summer anyway, like I used to do, and spent some time with my grandma Maggie. And she needed a ride from Red Bee over to Red Lake. Red Bee's 5 miles east of Red Lake. And so I drove her over in that agency building, and there was a bench outside, so she had to go see this man. I waited outside. And later on I found out that the man that she's seen was Middleholtz, Irwin Middleholtz, who was a scholarship man. I didn't think nothing of it. I go back out to California at the end of the summer, ready to go to school out there, and I get a letter that I could go to school. Winona State Teachers College, picked out by the BIA for this little Indian girl to be shipped down to southern Minnesota. Never been there before. But you know what? I'm glad I went. It was beautiful. It was really nice. And I stayed there for 2 semesters, withdrew legally, didn't want to mess up my records. Lord knows every Indian has a record, so I wanted to keep my record clean. So I withdrew, went back out to California, and now I'm getting around to what my point is. And that's where I first found out what it meant to, when I go home to tell my mom, she said, be proud, you're Indian, you know who you are. Okay, go out to Alcatraz. Hey, treaty said that any land that was vacated by the United States government was supposed to be reverted back to Indian title. That island, that rock, was vacated for a number of years and it never reverted back to Indian title. Just like a thing down in Minneapolis, a fort, some kind of fort they tried to take over but weren't successful in that. So the United States government wasn't living up to their word. That occupation on Alcatraz was for the purpose to get a centralized place to share our story and share our culture and learn about our culture. At one time we didn't have to learn about it, we lived it. It wasn't a natural thing. And so we come through this age of, you know, all this kind of discrimination and civil rights and everything, and find out who we really are. And we went through that whole thing about, you know, being kind of in a sense shedding the layers of oppression, shedding the layers of who they wanted to tell us who we were, instead coming out into our own and finding out the history and taking that pride and making it live and making it vibrant and making it a part of our life. To live the truth. We have to live the truth. We have to, America has to face the truth, first of all, before they can even talk about living. Because I'd rather be in the position I am now, in the sense of having our homeland, than anything. Without our homeland, without us keeping this land intact, we could perish as a people. The other thing that goes along hand in hand with that is our language. And, you know, I wish I could be talking to Anita here today in Ojibwe. I only know a little bit of our language, you know, and I hope the next generation will be able to, I'll be able to go to the trading post over here and hear a mother talking to her child in Ojibwe, go to the playground and hear a couple kids conversing in Ojibwe. That will be when the fire is totally, you know, a flame that we have totally come back from this oppression. You know, it oppresses me that the only language I can speak fluently is a people's language who came here and meant us harm.